Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. A few days ago, one of the craziest stories I have heard in quite some time dropped, and it is pertaining to Americans being transferred to El Salvadoran prisons. Yes, believe it or not, Americans being sent to El Salvadorian prisons. That is crazy. As a criminal defense attorney, that is literally one of the craziest things that I have heard in quite some time. Having done this work for all these years, I've never heard anything like this. And I don't believe that it can happen if our government follows the law. Okay? I just don't believe it can happen. Anyway, let's go over and look at an article that the New York Times published. The title says, Trump says he would jail Americans in El Salvador in a heartbeat. That right alone just shook me, right? That shook me just to hear that. The proposal is almost certainly illegal. I definitely agree, experts said, but President Trump's eagerness to entertain it showed his willingness to embrace extreme measures to demonstrate he is tough on crime. President Trump said on Tuesday that he was open to an offer by El Salvador's president to jail convicted criminals, including American citizens. That's the issue. In the Central American nation's notorious mega prison. If we had the legal right to do it, I would do it in a heartbeat, Mr. Trump said. So thankfully, he recognizes that this is likely not legal. But the fact that he said that he entertained it and would do it in a heartbeat still concerns me. He almost surely does not have the legal right to do it, legal experts say, in any attempt to carry out President Nayib Bukele's plan would probably be challenged in court. You think? It absolutely would be challenged in court. If this was one of my clients, I would absolutely challenge it in court over and over again. But Mr. Bukele's proposal to essentially turn El Salvador into a penal colony for the United States showed how far he's willing to go to define himself as Mr. Trump's primary ally in a region that the American president has disparaged. And for Mr. Trump, even musing over the proposal signaled his willingness to embrace extreme measures to show he is tough on crime and illegal immigration. So yes, this is just really, 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 really crazy. And there are a few reasons, a few laws that I don't think it can happen. Hello, everyone. I got great news. The merch is finally here. We've been waiting and waiting, but we can finally begin branding our channel. But we need your help to get our brand out there. If you like what we provide and like what you see, please go to the channel and grab your hoodie, your t-shirt, your mug, and we got more designs and products on the way. Just visit our YouTube channel at the Defiant Lawyers Network. Also, we will donate a portion of each dollar you spend on our merch towards some nonprofit. And remember, as always, stay woke. All right, let me go over those laws now for you to say, again, this is not something that should ever happen under our law. And by the way, I'm especially concerned for how such a thing would be applied racially. In other words, we look up and such a thing would be applied in a way that impacts African American men the most. Okay? I mean, that's not far-fetched. So many criminal justice laws and the criminal justice system, period, is definitely tilted against African American men. I work in this system every day. All right. So fortunately, there are laws in place that should stop this from ever occurring. All right. So I want to go over a few. So first, I would point to the Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment. All right. And it says, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, and property without due process of law. Now, keep in mind, this is the Fifth Amendment, not the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment says the same thing. It too has a due process clause, but it applies only to states. And since I presume the discussion that President Trump had with President Bukele was about federal inmates, I think I'm safe to assume that, and it's not would not affect state prisons. But even I don't care, federal or state prisons, the Fifth Amendment would apply. And if it were state prisoners involved in as well, then it would be the 14th Amendment. So the Fifth Amendment for federal inmates, 14th Amendment for state inmates. And so it would require that any American citizen get a hearing and be able to fight this, right? Make all the legal arguments he or she can make to prevent this from happening. And I would expect, I think, any federal judge who heard the argument and heard the craziness of this idea would certainly not allow any American citizen to be sent to El Salvador or any other nation to do his or her prison time. It's just crazy. Now, of course, I'm talking about American citizens who committed crimes here in America. If an American citizen commits a crime, say in El Salvador or some other country, then it may be possible for our government to extradite that person to that foreign country, to El Salvador or whatever country that is, so long as our country has an extradition treaty with that foreign country. Okay? And then there's the Eighth Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. And that would absolutely be cruel to send any American citizen down to El Salvador, right? And it would be unusual. I mean, think about visitation. Think about the conditions of the prisons in El Salvador. And I know they built this mega prison and have, from what I read, have brought crime down and made the country safe. Nevertheless, this should never happen because first, the Fifth Amendment Due Process Clause, the Eighth Amendment Cruel and Unusual Punishment Clause, and then extradition laws and treaties. When we're representing someone who is accused of a crime in another state, in another jurisdiction, we have to go through extradition laws. Okay, we have to be satisfied that there is an extradition treaty between Texas and some other state. Okay, and we still sometimes will hold an extradition hearing to allow a judge to hear all of our arguments for why this person should not be extradited to the other jurisdiction. So I'm sure, absolutely certain, extradition laws and treaties and so on are likely not in place regarding El Salvador, and therefore there would be a huge fight for a criminal defendant who is being sent to El Salvador or any country. Now, some countries we do have extradition treaties with, but I don't think we have any with El Salvador. Okay, now they can be created. And if they were created, then you would fall back on the Fifth Amendment, the Eighth Amendment, and still fight like crazy to keep your client from being sent down to El Salvador to spend time in prison. And then, and I'm not certain about this, but there also may be international laws that prohibit this. I'm not certain about that. That's not my area of practice. So there are several laws and even constitutional amendments that should prevent this from ever taking place for any American citizen. All right? And let's hope, because it's a crazy, crazy, crazy idea. It's a very crazy idea. So I wanted to bring this to you and talk to you about it. There isn't a lot to say about it now. There may be some developing facts. I may have to come back and update you because this could happen. Trump could try to do this since he said that he would do it in a heartbeat. That certainly means if his AG comes back and says this is constitutional, we're going to get pushed back in court, but we believe we can make a strong argument to make this happen. Wow. Wow. So I very well may have to come back and update you. And can you see that this is worse than privatization of prisons? We already have that issue. And now if we are sending American citizens to other countries to do their time without the protections that we have in our Constitution and federal laws and state laws, that would just be horrible, folks. Horrible. So this may be one of those types of things that you need to get on the phone and contact your congressperson and ask them to get involved in this, to look into this. This is crazy. And once again, it especially concerns me for African-American inmates because things just tend to work out where they disfavor African-Americans the most. We know that. That's the systemic structural racism that we live with on a day-to-day basis. So let's see what happens. Hopefully this goes nowhere. All right. Thank you for watching the video. I am Reverend and Civil Rights Attorney Augustus Corbett. And remember, always remain woke.